All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to decode a hidden language that's pretty much everywhere, shaping everything from our customer service calls all the way to how we apply for university. You know that feeling, right? You're on the phone with some company, and every single response, every question, even the way they say, "I understand your frustration," feels, well, prepackaged. It's kind of weird, like you're not having a real conversation, but interacting with a really carefully designed system. And there's a really good reason you feel that way. See, on one hand, you've got your normal, spontaneous conversation. It's messy, it's unplanned, it just happens. But on the other hand, you have what we see in call centers and so many other places today, a totally engineered interaction designed from the ground up to get a specific result. And this is no accident. Nope, it's a science. So how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this science of engineered language? Well, the thing we really need to unlock here is a concept that linguists call discourse. Now, it's a word that has two really powerful connected meanings.
So first, there's the big picture definition. Discourse, in this big sense, is just how we use language in our everyday social lives. It's the very fabric of our interactions. It's how we build relationships, how we do business, and how we create communities, all through words.
But then we can zoom in. A single discourse is like a specific package of language that carries an entire worldview with it. So think about something like capitalist discourse or environmental discourse. These aren't just random collections of words. They're whole systems of values and beliefs that literally shape how we see and talk about the world. And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of a huge shift that's been happening. When these specific ways of speaking, these discourses, start getting treated like products, language itself becomes a commodity. It stops being just about communicating, and it becomes all about designing language for success in a marketplace. Let's take a look at our first major trend to see how this works.
Okay, let's circle back to our call center example. This is the perfect illustration of a trend called reflexivity.
Now, reflexivity sounds super academic and complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's just that institutions are studying how communication works and then using that knowledge to engineer interactions to get the outcomes they want. They aren't just winging it. They're literally applying a scientific blueprint to conversation.
And the tools they use are something called discourse technologies. So for example, you've got question tags like, "It's a great deal, isn't it?" That's not really a question, is it? It's a statement that's just begging for you to agree. Or the classic inclusive we, like when they say, "Let's see what we can do." All of a sudden you're a team, creating this instant but totally artificial rapport. It's a very planned strategy that uses the nuts and bolts of grammar to control the conversation.
But here's the thing. This isn't just happening in the business world. Not at all. Let's pivot to a completely different area where these same ideas are popping up. Higher education. The trend here is called marketization.
Marketization is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's what happens when you reconstruct a part of social life, in this case education, on a market basis. Universities start to talk, look, and act more and more like businesses. They're not just places of learning anymore. They're competing in a marketplace for students, who more and more are talked about as customers. Just take a look at this breakdown of a typical university website. Those super professional photos, straight out of a corporate marketing playbook. The text is all customer-focused, which frames the student as a consumer. And the whole design is so slick and interactive, it feels less like a school and more like an e-commerce site. Every single element is working together to build a very specific identity, education as a polished product you can buy.
Okay, so we've got call centers engineering our conversations and universities marketing themselves like they're Apple or Nike. These are massive global trends. But what happens when these engineered ways of speaking become so common that we just stop noticing them?
And this, right here, is the crucial question. When a particular discourse becomes dominant, hegemonic, it starts to feel natural. It doesn't feel like a deliberate strategy anymore. It just feels like, well, the way things are. It becomes invisible, just part of the background, taken for granted common sense. So, what do we do about it? How do we respond? Well, there are basically three main options. We can just uncritically adopt these new ways of talking, accepting them as inevitable. Or we could try to reject them completely, pushing back against the whole thing. Or there's a third way, to resist by consciously adapting and using these linguistic tools for our own goals. Look,
At the end of the day, the point of all this isn't to say these trends are good or bad. The real takeaway is a skill, a powerful tool you can use. It's called discourse awareness. It's the ability to see the design behind the language, to spot the blueprints, and to really understand how our interactions are being shaped, often without us even realizing.
So I'm going to leave you with this question. The next time you're on a service call, or you're scrolling through a university website, or even just sitting in a meeting at work, listen a little closer. Now that you can see the engineering behind the words, how is that going to change the way you hear the world?